and welcome to another edition of our Book Club Live. Um, Before I bring our visiting author up, I just want to tell everybody, hey, and thanks for being so understanding with me not being around very much the last um, weeks, but Surrender to Love is now at the editors. Yay. So we are on, we are just doing well to be ready for those ARCs going out and for the release November 6th. I'm just, if you guys don't read any of my books this year, read this one. Um, like I've been telling you in my group, this book is absolutely like nothing I've written before. Um, I'm just so anxious for you to read it, and then I'm anxious to hear how you like it. So, with all that, let's move on because I have a feeling we're going to run over tonight, and because I just love talking with our guests so very much. So let me just make sure that we are actually showing up. So as soon as you get here, guys, tell me hey, and let me know if you are seeing us well. And also remember to put your name in the comments or I cannot see who you are. Hi, Karen. I do see you. And I see someone else is excited, but I don't know who. So let's bring our guest up. Ready?
Hi, guys.
Everybody knows how excited I've been to have you on. So I am just very thrilled that you, number one, said yes, you would do it, and number two, that you actually showed up. So yay!
Woohoo! Yeah, of course. I say I'm gonna do something. I show up.
So, what do I call you? Do I call you PT? Do I call you
You
Miss
can call me Patrice.
Patrice? Okay. My sister's name is Patricia. So if I happen to say the wrong thing, that's probably why.
Okay, it happens all the time.
But I bet it does. I bet it does.
But because when we lived in Paris, I got all kinds of weird looks
Oh.
because it's a male name there
Oh, it is?
exclusively. Yes. In Europe, it's typically a male name.
Like, does it translate to something?
Patrick.
Patrick, really?
Yeah. And they just I just got the funniest looks. I mean, because people would interact with me through email and then meet me and they'd be like, and when my husband was our bank account set up, they did everything they could to not put my name.
Really?
Our name because they didn't want to see his name and another male name.
So tell us, you lived in Paris?
Yes, I lived in Paris for 3 years with my husband's shop.
Okay. That you had to have had some incredible food while you were there.
It was amazing. It was an amazing experience for my kids. It was an amazing experience for us as a family. And we were there when they had their 9/11, when they had that really attack. And it wasn't in the same side of town that we were on. We were within 10 minutes of the Eiffel Tower. It was further away. But it definitely changed how we rode the metro and how we went about walking through the city for several weeks after that. So it was an experience for our kids, but it also taught them to have a world view of things and not a U.S. view of things, which I think is wonderful. It was good. It was good for them. Good for us. It was a great experience. Never lived in the city before either, so that was quite a change.
So tell us a little bit about your background.
My background is I am not classically trained to be an author. So my degree is in business, I mean, which comes in handy being an indie author. but I wasn't trained to be a writer. I've just always been a big reader, and the love of a romance and a story has always just stuck with me. I've always been a reader. So um, I told myself one day I wanted to be a writer, but I just had to get there. Had to have enough life experiences to finally sit down and try to write my own stories. But I enjoy reading.
When did you start writing to publish?
I didn't play. I always said I wanted to do it, and I would play and write stories every once in a while, but I never did anything until after I had my two children, and we were between moves, and my youngest was just a baby, and it was a great time for me because I was going to go part time. I had gone part time with my last job, and as we moved, I could have stayed home, which I did, stay home with the kids, but there was no way I was going to not earn money. It's just not in my DNA. And so I said, well, this is the time. And so I started writing, and it took me, I think, 9 months to finally come up with a story that worked. And I submitted to my first books I sold to Alora's Cave. And then from there, I went on and sold a trilogy to Harlequin. And
Wow.
Harlequin, I had also wanted to write a young adult series, but they weren't as interested in that. And so I put it out there, but it was just at the time is when Amanda Hawking was doing really, really well with her young adult series.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Amanda Hawking?
Yes, vaguely.
Yeah, she's the one who she got this amazing deal from New York publishers coming as an indie published author over to New York. And I was like, if she can do it, there's no reason I can't try it because it was a young adult series. And so I published that young adult series and it did well. But then I had an idea for Mr. Black and was asked to be in an anthology. And I had to write a novella for it. And so I wrote that novella, planning on publishing it anyway on its own, whether it was going to be in that anthology or not. And the story took off. And thankfully, I knew where I was going with it after I'd written the novella and writing. So that was in 2014. And 10 books later, I'm still writing that series in the Shadows series. So that's what happened.
And we're very thankful that you are.
Thank you. Me too. I love these characters. They feel like real people to me. I want to know what's going on in their lives.
When you started in the Shadows, did you have any idea it would be this big?
No. I never in my life, I have not, the longest series I had written was my young adult series, and that was 6 books. And the first one was a prequel. And 5 full-length novels, and it was a whole 2 characters, and it was their whole story. It was very epic fantasy. But if you like Sebastian and Talia's love affair and their love story, it's very epic like that. It's just that they're younger. They're 17. So, and that one, it was the longest I'd written, 6 books. Whereas this one has a much bigger cast of characters, a much bigger, I wouldn't say world because the other one's fantasy. It's contemporary fantasy. In other words, it happens in contemporary times, but they have powers, completely made up world that I've made up around them, magic and fantasy. But whereas with Talia and Sebastian and all of the black security, now, red and black, but that whole security team and all those people, I had no idea it would be as big as it was. So it's just kind of mushroomed.
Wow. So, well, I think that I must have read Mr. Black, I guess, when you released it in 2014. I can remember vividly reading that book and loving it so much. And I hope that I see that Shannon is in here because she had, say your name for her.
My name?
Shannon. No, say Shannon's name for her.
Oh, hey, Shannon. Hi.
Yeah. Her office was right beside mine, and we just we loved your books. And
Oh, thank
talk about
you.
them, whatever. So I can remember that very well. So,
I love readers do that. I love when they read a book together. So that's
Mhm.
awesome.
And yeah, and right about that was also the time that I was starting to write as well. So, and actually, Shannon was one of my first editors. So, yay, Shannon. Anyhow, tell us about how in the world did you come up? Okay, so all of the world of In the Shadows wasn't in your mind at the time that you started it. So
Right.
what made you start or have the idea for Mr. Black?
Um, it's kind of a convoluted story, but
Those are the best kind.
a long time ago, Catherine Falk was going to do some type of military ball something. Um, it was some kind of storyline or something, and people were going to submit novellas for it. And I thought about doing it, and I had kind of outlined something, but I never really went anywhere with it because maybe it didn't feel fleshed out to me or something about it. But the story had always been in the back of my mind for years. I wrote it years ago. Catherine Falk, I'm sorry if anybody doesn't know who Catherine Falk is, but she ran the Romantic Times magazine and company, romance RT reviews. Um, and so I knew about that and I had it in the back of my mind. Like I said, I kind of outlined it, but I didn't get very far with it. And then just other stories came to me and I was working on them. So when I was asked to do the anthology, I said, well, this is a novella I started. This is something I could probably do. And let me just see where it goes. And I had written a lot more books since then. And so I think I was more mature in my writing and it was just easier to flesh out the story. And even though the novella, for people who read it, like, oh, well, it's not everything's here. It's because that novella is really just an introduction to these characters and how they met. And then the next two books is where you truly get their whole story, their whole romance, and how it all interconnects, how their lives have crossed many times and why. And so the novella was a chance for me to basically flesh out the characters and get you to fall in love with them like I did, and give you the other two books, full-length novels, to complete their story.
Well, we certainly did fall in love
Thank
with
you.
Talia and Sebastian.
I
Um,
love Talia. I mean, absolutely love her because she's not a weak character. She's strong. I mean, she's been through a lot.
yeah.
But I love writing strong women, especially if I'm going to have a really alpha male. I have to put a strong female with them. So,
Let me ask everybody that's watching tonight if you've read the entire series. Let me know if you've read the entire series because I don't want us to give any spoilers out if you've not read it. But if everyone here had read the entire series, I am sure that we would have a bunch of questions. So, um, let me just check in and see if we. Um, okay, everything seems to be going well. Very well. Let's get to some questions if you don't mind.
sure, go right ahead.
Um, was there any parts of this story that were difficult or emotionally trying to write?
Well, obviously, what happened to Talia, what Hayes did to Talia, um, losing her little sister, um, all those aspects. I mean, I knew when I wrote Mr. Black what had happened, but I only did hints of it, and you learn more about it in Scarlet Red. So I the hardest part is writing something like that and making sure that you are careful for people who have triggers. So I tried really hard to keep it um, keep the details out, but keep the emotion in. Because I didn't want to alienate readers and they wouldn't move forward thinking, okay, this entire series is going to be really, really triggery stuff. And I mean, some readers love that. But I wanted it to be more about the emotional impact that it had on her and how it changed her as a person,
Right.
stronger in her own way. But she had to figure that out through the story. So,
What was your favorite part of Mr. Black to write? Okay, probably. I'm not going to say. Go ahead.
well, I will say this. I was very shocked at how long the love scene was.
Well, I wasn't going to go there, but
I'll be honest with you.
you write that very, very well. I'll just say that. I bet you had to do a lot of research for that, didn't you?
I had to do some, obviously, because I'm not into that lifestyle or whatever. But and I really, again, didn't want it to be about the lifestyle as much as the emotional impact that that would have on the characters and how it would relate to them as people and their pasts. So it wasn't as much about the actions as it was about the emotional changes that would come through the characters because of it.
Right.
And I mean, some people don't really get into really descriptive love scenes, and I have always enjoyed them because for me, at least, I mean, at the beginning of my series, there's a lot more of them. As you go through the series, there's less of them, but they're much more emotionally impactful. So, which makes sense because that is the arc of a relationship. When you first start dating, there's a lot of sex. But as you move forward, there's more emotional aspects to it and less of the physical. You still have it, but when you do, it's much more quality and not quantity. I guess
Right.
that's where I'm from. But so that's why I would say that's probably the one I enjoyed the most, only because it ties the whole story together. And again, I was actually very surprised at how long it was. when I looked at it afterwards, I was like, "Is there anything I cut out? I mean, should I cut
No,
this?" But
no.
that was the problem. When I read through the whole thing, there was nothing I could cut out because, and the way I write, if you're going to write a very descriptive love scene, it needs to be there for a reason. So if nothing is learned or gained from the love scene, and nothing changes between the characters before or after, then you don't need the love scene. So if you can strip it completely out of the story, there was no reason to have it there. That's why I couldn't cut it, because every bit and piece that was revealed through the love scene was about them and their past and how they are going to go forward and the mystery aspects that would lead into the next book.
Right.
So pull it out and keep the integrity of the story or the intensity of it, because it was an incredibly intense book. Definitely, because I mean, they just met, but they experienced something that ties to their past, that ties
Right.
to their present, and ties to their future, all in one novella.
I thought it was really cool. Please tell me you meant to do this and that you didn't. This wasn't an accident. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've done things that people point out, and I'm like, well, that was just a total accident. I didn't mean to do that. But where they, where when they first met when she was younger, and she was having trouble breathing, and he told her to breathe,
Mm-hmm.
breathe. And then later, when they're in, I don't know if they're in the bedroom or the library or whatever, he tells her to breathe again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, that would make him, reading it before I knew what was going to happen. I wondered if that was going to be what triggered him remembering her.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Good job.
and you probably do this in your own books too. I have little Easter eggs throughout my
Mm-hmm.
stories, and I write them in such a way that my husband has read some of my books, and he says my books read like TV shows. They're very fast paced. He said they're usually over a short period of time. They're very, very fast, blah, 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 which coming from a guy who reads epic fantasy, he's like, this is different for like, he wants all the detail. Describe the room and the minutia of the room. I'm like, oh. So he enjoyed it, but he said it was a very different style. It's like watching TV. I said, well, that's kind of how I describe my stories. Is they're it's like epic, but then fast paced. Now I'm sorry, I just got off track on what you asked me.
The breathing, the two different breathing.
The breathing. So what I try to do is, as I'm writing a story, is incorporate little bits and pieces that tie back to the past. They may or may not recognize it at that point. For instance, in Mr. Black, when she's getting in the car and he's helping her get in the car to leave the party with Cass, and who's completely drunk. And then he looks at her necklace and he touches it, but he doesn't say anything. And that necklace was what she was fighting with that homeless guy about.
Right.
Remember? Mm-hmm. And he didn't say anything. So you're thinking, oh, is he going to say something? Is he going to say something? He doesn't. And it's not until book 2 that it comes up again. And it all ties back. Remember at the end of book 2, when he sees his sister wearing the necklace. Mm-hmm. So, and that everything, it all comes full circle for him. But it takes, so there's little bits and pieces that the way I try to write my stories is that it's there and it feels like it's part of that moment. But when you go and do a reread later, you're like, oh my God, it was totally tied back to this and this and this. Uh-huh. So it mattered at the moment for the scene, but then it meant something much broader later and gets tied back as I move forward in the story. That's how I try to write them as best I can.
You do it very well.
Thank you.
You do it very, very well. How do you approach writing? Do you plan it all out, or do you let the characters talk for you?
I plan it. Well, with this series, I have to plan it because there's too many balls in the air. And now that I'm 10 books deep into a series, if I don't remember what has happened in the past, so either one, don't repeat it, or I say something incorrect about a character, I have to plan, especially the mystery elements, because you and I were talking about earlier that I always write a book ahead. I don't write a book ahead. I think a book ahead. So as I'm writing the current book, I'm always thinking, okay, what's going to be the mystery, the main plot mystery in the next book? So those are going to be my secondary subplots in the current book that I'm working on. Threads that will pull to the next story. I mean, sometimes I can have 2 secondaries. I can have a main plot and then the secondary that happens within the story itself. But then I'll have another one that is tied or pulled into the next book as well and becomes the main plot. So I plan that way. And then I also, you and I were talking about earlier, I do storyboarding. So I write out just kind of one-liners for my chapters. This is what this chapter is going to be about. This is what this chapter is going to be about. Then I do it on sticky notes on a whiteboard, and things don't work the way I want them to. I can literally lift the sticky note and put it somewhere else. Well, then if I move this scene from happening here and I move it earlier, how's that going to change everything that happens after? And then I have to go and rewrite some of the sticky notes, rearrange them again. That's the nice thing about the sticky notes is I can literally move them and in my brain then rearrange it how it's supposed to go. And I don't always follow. There's a lot of scenes that I've written that are pivotal scenes that were not in my outlines. They just came to me. I was writing and I was like, oh, that was a really good scene. I'm glad I put it in there, but it wasn't in my original, it wasn't in my original plan. So I do what I call high level outlining. And then as I write the story and things come to me, or as the scene unfolds and things change or develop, then I allow the path and the road to veer if it needs to. As long as I know where I'm going, the veering's okay because I have to figure out how to get back there, if it makes sense to do that.
So when you start writing a book, you know how it's going to end. You have
Yes.
an idea of where it's going.
I know three things. I know typically the title, because if you've seen all my titles, they literally tie into the storyline and they're symbolic. So I think my titles do double whammies, not just the title of the book, but how it ties literally into the story. So I know my title and my hero and heroine's names. Obviously, in this case, I always know them because I'm writing series. I know the beginning and I know the end. Yeah, and the end may change a little bit, but the general ending is, I know it. I don't know any of the stuff in the middle until I start outlining.
So you say you're doing them on cards. How many cards might be in a planning session for a book?
It fills up a whole whiteboard, so it could be 40. I typically write 25 chapters. So, I mean, you can divide that out. How many? 2 or 3? It could be 2 or 3 per chapter. It depends on how intense that chapter is. And what's nice about this, it does several things for me, as I talked to you about, because I color code the cards based on whether it's a main plot, subplot, romance. I can back away from it and look and see, is my story balanced? Do I have romance here? Do I need it here more? I need more romance here. I need a little bit, add more romance here. And I now have a purple card. Pink is for romance, but I also have a purple card for family. So if there's family interactions, a lot of family, because there's so much family in this series, it's just as important as the romance to me as far as balancing. And so I make sure that there's enough family stuff too that pulls through and ties out. And what's nice too about it is that because I have the cards, I can look at the cards and and then I take my eraser pen and I go underneath each card and I kind of say, okay, 3,000 words, 2,000 words, 5,000 words. I make kind of guesses as to how long each chapter is going to be. And then I know when I'm at the end of those cards, okay, I have my 70,000 words or 65,000 words. Now it's going to be, when I'm finally done, probably plus or minus 5K or even 10K, depending on how much I flesh out. Mm-hmm. But I know that what I've outlined is a full story. And it's worked for me really well. It's a way to really get my head around the story, especially because I write mystery, suspense, thrillers, and I need to know where I'm going. I need to know those surprises and those twists. And sometimes I don't even know some of them. Sometimes they do come up as I write, but I need to know how I'm going to be planting the red herrings and planting these little tidbits here and there to lead you to through the story and through the mystery aspects of the story.
How long does it take you to write
say again?
a book? How long does it take you to write a book?
Normally, if I just booked it, I could do a full novel in 2 months. But I never have been able to do that with my life. It's just too much going on. Typically it's more like 4. But I've done it. I've done it in 2 months. I've done it in 8 weeks. I've done it several times. And sometimes there's some of my better books. My husband says, "Why do you do that to yourself?" Purpose. It just works out that way. If I have too much time on my hands, I write less. If I have less time, if I have less time, and it's like my mind goes hyper focused, and I can really just focus on the story. And the most I've ever written in one session was 10,000 words, which is.
I've done it twice.
I don't recommend it. I was dead. But my average, and I don't know what yours is, but my average is I typically write half a chapter a day. And I should be writing faster. I wish I could write faster. I'm sure my readers wish I could write faster, but it's just the way my brain works. I think I just shut down after I get about 25,000 words. 25,000, 2,500 words. I get 2,500 words, my brain gets done
Yep. Yep.
for the day.
I'm between 2 and 3 a day usually.
Yeah, yeah. And it's if it was consistent, I could put out several books a year. The problem is mine's not consistent because I've just had too much upheaval since I moved here. I seriously, I had to redo our wood floors again.
Oh no.
So I've already been through it once. Had to do it again, and it's
Uh,
just anyway, it's a mess. So, what any other questions specific to series or?
let's see. What is your, without giving any spoilers, just a yes or no. And this is for waiting. And this is for the line where he says, and this is for waiting until, and then a bad word, now to walk into my life. And Sebastian says that
Yeah.
is that's her favorite line in the book. Yet I read the blurbs from the other books. It seems he doesn't want a relationship. So why this line, or is it that what happened to him before the next book changes this for him?
He's never had a relationship, not really. And this person, Talia, brings out so much emotion, and he's not emotionally ready. So, why now? And when I can't, and basically what he's saying is he's not available mentally, and he's getting ready to ship out. Physically, he's going to be gone. But he's still screwed up from his own past. He's not emotionally ready for her, but he knows she's what he needs. So it's a very frustrating scenario for him to be in. She's his perfect match, and he doesn't admit that yet, and he won't for a while. Comes from.
So take us through, without giving anything away, take us through the series that you have so far.
Okay. You've got the first 3 books are going to be Sebastian and Talia's epic romance. You will get to their happy ever after by book 3, Mr. Black, Scarlet Red, and Blackest Red. And then you meet her best friend, Cass, and you meet his cousin, Calder, who's more like a brother to Sebastian through those 3 books. And they play major parts in their story. They're not just side characters, they're family. They're part of their world. They're part of their lives. And then, so the next 2 books after that, Gold Shimmer and Steel Rush, are Cass and Calder's story. So it's a duet. You get to their happy ever after. And then the next book is if you want to keep reading, you're going to read where they officially get married. There's another book for that. And then after that, where they have their first child, this is Sebastian and Talia. And then the book after that, we swing back to Cass and Calder, where they officially get married. And there's every time I bring you forward with their personal lives and what's going on with their lives, some pivotal moment in their life. But there's always mayhem and chaos and murder. There's always something going on around them that they have to solve. There's a mystery, but it's also related to their lives. It's not just, it's a case they're working on that has nothing to do with them. It's about them. So they have their own emotional aspects that we're working, situations or scenarios that they're working through, getting married, dealing with family, having a baby, dealing with those issues, and then there's this external force, something going on, but has to do with them that suddenly disrupts their lives. And so that's how each of the stories have both a mystery suspense element that is equal to the romance and the family saga that happens in the storyline.
What's coming? What's coming up next?
Oh, okay. Now, I am not telling anybody.
Darn it.
Black Steel is about, because this is the first time I've not done that. Usually I tell you it's Cass and Calder or Sebastian and Talia or whoever, but I have not released who it is yet. So I'm keeping that a secret.
Fine. About when would we know?
As late as possible. Probably when I go to release the cover. I'll give that information out. But yeah.
Marissa that asked that question said, wow, I love that line even more after your explanation.
Oh, yay! I'm so glad.
So we've already discussed that. Who is your favorite author?
Oh my.
And you want to read?
It's funny. I have lots of authors that I really like. I don't typically talk about any new ones, like the recent ones. I have enjoyed many of them. Like I've enjoyed some by Keeland books. Enjoyed some Megan March. But my favorite author, believe it or not, is not even contemporary. I love Karen Marie Moning. I love her book, her Fever series. I love it, love it, love it. And I love it because it's dark, but also her imagination to come up with these fae worlds that she did just blew my mind. That her imagination was so amazing to come up with what she did. Also, I would love to meet Barrons personally.
You'd like to meet who?
Barrons. Barrons is her. She writes really amazing heroes.
Gotcha.
She writes very, very, very good heroes. So if you've never read, she writes historical romances too. She started off writing historical. So if you've never read any of her stuff, you should go back and read her historical romances first. She writes amazing heroes. Really, really.
Now, let me see. I need to write that name down. Her name's Karen what?
Karen Marie Moning. Yeah. Moning. She's been around a long time. But yeah, she's my favorite. I just have really respected how she built the world that she did in her Fever series. And she still maintained this still yummy hero who's very dark, but in a lot of ways, but also just very yummy. She did a good job with him.
Yeah, I don't see how paranormal fantasy authors can create the whole world that they do and keep it straight. Because, I mean, you're talking about cultures, language, world.
Well, that's why you hardly ever see novellas. How do you write the entire world and the romance and the mystery? I mean, there's a lot of words you got to get in there to get it all across. So they're typically not short books.
So they're longer than romance?
Usually. I mean, they're still romance length in the sense that they're not as epic as my husband's 800-page one book. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's the book? So you could fit like 2 or 3 romances in that. But they are typically longer because you have to build the world. So you have all that stuff you got to put in there. You've got the mystery elements. You got to put that in there. And you've got the romance. Got to put that in there. You know, love scenes, whatever. It takes up space. So it's a lot to fit. So I really respect authors who can do that with fantasy because they've got a whole layer that they have to explain to you and get across that automatically happens in a contemporary romance. Everybody knows Manhattan or the idea of New York City and then being in the subway and you know. You don't have to explain it. It's just known. So yeah.
And then keeping it straight. I couldn't do that.
But it's really ironic is that for all I read up until I was in college was historical romances. I didn't read contemporary. It wasn't until later.
I read historical for a long time as well. I started out with, we talked earlier about Emily Loring was the first one that I ever read. And then Janet Daly. Do you remember Janet Daly?
Yeah.
I had all of her paperback books and loaned them to a friend, never got them back. That was sad.
I had a neighbor that was so into romance novels. I would just go next door, and she had a whole wall, and I would just take a grocery store bag and pick all my books and go home and read them all in a week and come back and get more.
I don't see anything wrong with that. If you saw I have two bookcases filled with them.
It was, I mean, for a 13-year-old girl who had no money, this was
Oh,
awesome.
wow. You are like
My library.
your next door library. Exactly.
Yeah. I love Joanna Lindsay and
Oh,
um gosh, I'm blanking on what's her name? Knight in Shining Armor. Jude Devereaux.
yes.
And just Jane Castle, which is also, who was that? She wrote under 2 or 3 pen names. But anyway, I read them all. I read
I don't know if this is how you pronounce her name, but Linda Lael Miller.
Linda Lael Miller. Do you know that she wrote a trilogy that was about vampires? She did. She did.
I have.
Yeah, she did. The only thing she wrote like that, I think. I could be wrong, but I think after that she just went back to what she was doing. But yeah, she did. She wrote a trilogy I love, by the way. And then and even Joanna Lindsay did a futuristic, two or three futuristics, and then she went back to her historicals. But yeah, she did.
Oh.
Loved them.
Yeah. Where do you get your inspiration for your stories?
Everywhere. Movies, a snippet and a line of a song, music. That's why I'm one of those weird writers. Some writers have to listen to music while they write because like the soundtrack of they're listening to is the soundtrack for the book. But I get too into the story that's being told in the song that I would not be paying attention to what I'm writing. I would be like listening raptly. Oh, I want to know what happens in that country. They tell stories too. They're all stories.
I know. I know.
So yeah,
I think that if you write, I think you just, or I do, you see the world differently. I think because you pay more attention to the little details that someone else may not. But interact. One of my favorite things that I used to do was go sit in the mall and just watch people. I used to love doing that. So.
Yes, and it's fun if you go to a bar.
I don't think I've ever been to
a bar. Yeah, you get all kinds of interesting. Or if you go to a Starbucks and you pretend like you're working and just people are amazing.
They really are. Do you insert parts of yourself or those around you into your novels?
Sometimes, like Sebastian's nothing like my husband. But my husband is his own way. He's very funny. He's very smart. And he has, in his own way, an alpha male. But he's nothing like Sebastian. Though Sebastian's humor, that's my husband. Mm-hmm. So when you see like little bits and pieces, like the scene where she almost walked through the glass window, or he thought she was going to. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Man, I thought you were going to pigeon it." My husband said that to me. And it was one of the funniest things. I mean, I just lost it. I was so glad. So funny. My husband's very witty. So.
Let's see. What specific thing or moment inspired this story? Like, did you dream a moment in it? Did you witness something in real life that let your imagination run wild?
Not in Mr. Black, but I dreamed the vampire series that I wrote for Harlequin. I dreamed that opening scene, and then I woke up and I just frantically wrote it down, and that was it. And then from that, I wrote a trilogy. So that whole scene where there's a scene where the girl is running from a vampire is running with her, but she's scared of him because he's kidnapped her. and they're both running from other bad guys, and they're being shot at, and they're upstairs and like on a wharf, and he throws her. He's got a gun and he shoots toward the window, and he throws her through the window because it was the only way to save her, because she was going to get shot because they were coming in behind him. But she, of course, goes flying through the window, not knowing that there's water below. So that whole scene, I dreamed that scene.
Wow.
Not write a story around this opening scene. And so that's where my Scions trilogy that I wrote for Nocturne, Harlequin's Nocturne line, that's where that opening scene came from.
Wow.
It's a dream.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do a lot of dream writing too.
Keep a notebook by my nightstand.
I do too. I do too. One of the black and white marbled ones.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a request for you. You might,
Mm-hmm.
or you might already have this, a chart of the characters' interconnections. I've read all the Mr. Black. I've read all of the Mr. Black, but I get myself confused after a while.
Yes, I do need to do that, because I even need to do it for myself. Not that I don't know my characters, but I can do a top level version, just how they're all interconnected. I think it will matter too if I ever do a spinoff. It'll matter especially then. But yeah, so because some people have said, well, who was Simone? I'm like, really? She's only been mentioned like 4 books, but yeah. So yeah, it doesn't matter. And if I did it though, it would be on my website. I won't put it in the books. It's just it would be too complicated to try to. The goal went after the first 5 books. So the first 3 are Sebastian and Talia, the next 2 are Cass and Calder, and then all the last 5 are standalone stories, in the sense that you can pick up that book, you can start the series there and read it, and it's a complete story in and of itself. You will get more out of it if you start from the beginning, because they have history. And if you want to know how these 2 got together, and how Cass and Calder got together, or whatever else, and you want their romance before, then yes, it makes sense to start from the beginning. But the mystery and their relationship at that point in time, it's resolved in the bubble of that book. So that's why all the books after book 5 are standalone stories. Because I want, especially the longer series, get sometimes people see a series and like, ugh, I have to go back and read from the very beginning. Some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. That's why I did it the way I've done it. It's just that the story for Sebastian and Talia and Cass and Calder were too long to put in one book. They were just too complex and too much stuff to put in one book. Otherwise, I would put it in one book. And I am going to put them. The first 3 are in a anthology. I'm getting ready to release a new cover for it, and I'm going to put Cass and Calder's in an anthology with a new cover, so that if you want to grab those that way, you can. And they're complete stories together, and they'll just all be together. So I was giving it as an option for readers who have to have their happy ever after in the book they're reading. So that's how I've done it.
Shannon asks, can Dan and Nina have a spinoff?
Yeah, people have asked. I don't know yet. Definitely there's more to their story. And so I have to figure out if it makes sense for it to be a spinoff, or to be, I haven't gotten there yet. Yes, I agree that there's more to their story. As a matter of fact, I know there's more to their story, because Den has some stuff in the background too, that's going to come out. And I don't know if it's going to be enough for its own book, because their last story had his history and her history coming together and being revealed. It was enough for its own book. But I don't know if the other one will be right now the way I'm thinking it is. But I think I just have to write some more books and then I will know there's enough. And then I'll know. But I don't know yet. But when
Sure.
I'll write them. So
How do you pick your character names and locations?
um the names, I don't know how I picked the character names, honestly. Oh, I know how I picked Talia's name. Um, she was the character in Firefly and loved Talia in Firefly. And it's just a character I really, really liked, and I love the name. And Sebastian, I just love the name. Sometimes in the past, I would pick names based on like what they mean, but I haven't done that as much now. Oh, Din. Din's name. Um, do you watch the what's it called? Uh, Blacklist. Do you watch Blacklist? The TV show Blacklist. Um, the guy on there who is the right hand man to the main character, is a black guy, and I loved him. I loved his quiet calmness, but you knew he had a story. I mean, you knew he had this like. So when I saw that character, I was like, that, that's how I kind of see Den. And so I think that's kind of where he kind of started in my mind. But then there's other people I see, like Idris, see a little bit of Idris in him. There's a lot of different mixes of people I see in Den. Um, but some people said, well, he's Sebastian. Like, well, no, they're different guys, but very alpha in their own. I just battle that they have.
I just can't quit coughing. I promise you, I'm not sick. I promise.
Well, I don't think I can get it through the screen.
But I'll wear a mask if you want me to. Let's see. I love revisiting characters in a series. It feels like I'm catching up with old friends. Don't know who said that. Another reader recommended Catherine Slaughter, author.
Books, yeah. Uh-huh.
Shannon loves Knight in Shining Armor.
Yes.
Oh, Kathleen Woodowis. I don't know if that's how you say her name. Woodowis.
It was The Flame and the Flower. Yep. I read them. I
read
them
there too.
I love the Judith McNaught books. I read them all. So, yep.
And my husband and daughter keep wanting me to get rid of them, and I'm like, I can't. They're my friends. I can't.
And like I said, you never know. Maybe one day you'll get to meet them.
Oh gosh.
Full to meet. Like I said, I was had gone to the ladies' room, and Virginia Henley was in there. Was that
they have to go to the bathroom. Wow.
Yeah. So weird. I was like, oh my God. So it was so cool to meet someone. I'd read so many of her books.
Let's see. Pat said she's read the first 4 books of the series. Keep reading, Pat.
Oh my God.
Shannon.
Feel Raj.
Shannon says she's read them all.
Oh,
yay. Let's see if we have anything I've missed. Let's see. Shannon's here. Pat's here. Helen says hey. Karen is here. Marisol is here. Let's see. Marisol says, I usually avoid novellas because some authors tend to tell more than show, yet you did a wonderful job at it. Is your writing process different for a novella than it is for a book?
Well, obviously it has to be a little bit because you got to compact a story. Now, typically in a novella that has a happy ever after, yes, you have to compact it. But because I wrote mine as a cliffhanger, it's a little bit different. So to answer the question, yes, the way I did Mr. Black is a little bit different. If she reads Ethan, which is the prequel novella to Brightest Kind of Darkness series, it is a complete story in itself. But basically, the way I write my novellas, if it is a complete story, it's a vignette. So it's going to be a very short period of time, and it's going to be a moment in time. So the story is complete, but it's not going to span a long period of time because it's just too short to
Right.
get the story in there. So that's kind of how I do it. But other authors have done, I think actually, what's her name? I'm blanking on the author's name now. She was the same time frame that Smoke and Mirrors came out. I know you guys are going to tell me the name of the author because she ended up going and writing suspense. Both ladies did actually, but it was like Sun, something in the Sun, Midnight Sun. But I think that was a novella. It was like a pretty short book, but it was very popular. Very, very popular. So whole stories can be told in novellas, and it's a skill. Some people are really, really good at it. And I think I'm still more suited to at least category length to get the full story out. For me personally, it's just it's where my comfort zone is. So that's why I don't write many novellas. Some people are great at
Yeah.
it.
It's hard for me to do because
Mm-hmm.
I just don't write short very well. I get carried away.
Right.
So,
I can understand. It's not easy. It's
so
not.
tell us what we need to be looking at coming up for you next.
Well, next is the next book in the series, and I do have I wouldn't call it a spinoff, but I am going to have cameo. Sebastian Tai will have a cameo in a trilogy that I want to write. It'll be in the same vein as far as romantic suspense, but I think it's going to be a little lighter. I wouldn't say, I mean, some could call it romantic comedy, but I wouldn't call it that because I still have heavy elements in the story. It's just not as heavy and as intense as the In the Shadows books, especially the way they started, or dark. I don't think it's going to be as dark. But I don't want to say anything beyond that because I have to finish fleshing them out. But definitely, I will have a crossover because I love seeing that. I love seeing crossover characters like show up in a book unrelated to the series. No, so it's going to be happening in Manhattan too, just different. And they will end up connecting in the story, but it's going to be its own trilogy.
We can look for that next year.
Yeah, in next year, and they will not be. There'll be one couple, another couple, another couple. So it'll be three couples, each having their own story. Again, as I always do, I bring them into the next book and the next book, but there won't be any cliffhanger with those books. Right now, that's not the plan. So,
Well, we will all look forward to that.
thank you.
Pat says that she keeps reading them because they're so good.
Oh, thank you. I
Um,
it because you are reading them more than once, that you see the little Easter eggs I put in there, and it's just little things. It's just little tiny things, but I do put them in there on purpose, and I hope that people go, "Oh yeah, that's why."
yeah.
So I've had many readers tell me that they caught so many things that they missed on the first read because the first read they're just like, "Gotta get this story. I want to go. What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen?"
Yep.
And then the second time they know what's going to happen so that they can slow down and read it and just really absorb every little bit of it and see how it all. And I think you do read differently when you're reading the second time around because you do look for those things to tie back to, oh, why didn't I see it? But now I do.
Mhm.
This is how she was leading me to it. Now I see, because now you know the whole story. Except for my mother-in-law, who unfortunately has passed away. But she always read the end first. Why?
Well, I will say that there are some books that I just get so frantic over that I have to know how it's going to end before I can enjoy rest of the book.
That was her thing. She needed to know that she wasn't going to waste her time.
Right.
She said, I need to know. I'm not wasting my time. I'm not going to be unhappy. As long as I'm not going to be unhappy, then I'll go back to the beginning and read the whole thing.
Yep.
And unbeknownst to me, one of my beta readers does the same thing. I don't know if she does it with my books, but she reads the end. I was like, are you kidding me? I had no idea.
Whatever works, you know. Whatever
Exactly.
works.
I was just so surprised. And my beta reader never once said that she reads end first. I happened to see it in a comment on Facebook. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh goodness. Well, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We went over a little bit, but I knew that we would.
Well, that's me. Blah, 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 blah.
It's just been so nice talking to you and getting to know you, getting to know the person behind the books that I've always loved. So,
Well, thank you very much. I am not really, I guess I am a little bit in Talia, but I'm not my character. But I always wonder if when people meet the author, they're like, yeah, that person's nothing like their. So, anyway.
oh, well, you know, I, I do, a lot of people that even know me think that things in my books are the way they are in real life. And it's like, don't you know me? No, that's not me.
And then you get,
They call it fiction.
yeah, but especially when you write sexy or romance and
Right.
you're party and, the guy's like, oh, do you and your husband, or someone will make these comments. I'm like, do you think Stephen King goes out and kills someone so that he can write about it better? All imagination.
Right. Right. And fiction is called fiction.
I have no idea how many times I've had to field that question.
Wow. Well, when your next book comes out, maybe you can come back and visit with us.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all, everybody, for all the questions and interest in my books. I hope that you keep reading and join the world of my Black security and I guess red and black security now people, because I have enjoyed writing them so much and they just feel real to me.
They feel real to me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me and inviting me on. I appreciate you doing that as well.
Well, you just don't know how much this has meant to me and Shannon for you to be here.
Shannon.
So we'll tell you goodbye so you can get back to your wine.
All right.
Got it? Okay. And we'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care. All right.
Bye-bye. Okay, let me just tell everybody real quick because we did go over. Remember, Friday is, I don't even remember anymore. Let's see. Thursday is our cover reveal. How could I forget that? On Thursday, we have our cover reveal for Surrender to Love. You're going to have to come for that to see the cover because it's incredible. It's probably my favorite cover of this series. And let's see what else is going on this week. You're going to get, I'm not going to mention it. Something else is going to be happening on October the 1st. That's all I'm going to say. Stay tuned. You'll see what I mean. Check out the posts. And we will talk to everybody. Thanks so much for coming. And we will chat again later. Bye-bye. Oh, I didn't tell you guys. Hang on, don't leave. I forgot to tell you who our featured author for next month is because I totally forgot to upload the picture. So give me just a second because I'm super excited about this as well. Next month, our visiting author is going to be Zoe York. And our book for next month is going to be Prime Minister. I know I put that in my group today to see which one of those two books you wanted us to do, and Prime Minister won. So there you go. We're doing Prime Minister for October. So we'll see everybody October 26th. Talk to you guys later. Bye.